been a year now since I turned the My Little Pony main 6 into Hazbin Hotel Cinemas, and I wanted to just revisit this and redesign them essentially. I've also just finished watching the second season of Hazbin Hotel, so I'm quite inspired right now to draw a bunch of Hazbin Hotel related things. So I was thinking, why not design the main 6 into Hazbin Hotel Overlords? I am going to give you guys a little warning just because I will be talking about gory stuff in here. I'm going to be talking about the character's death, how they ended up in Hazbin Hell, and also kind of what their powers are as overlords. So just viewers' discretion is advised. Alright, so without any further ado, let's get started. Right, so starting off with Applejack, whose entire vibe would be essentially a scarecrow demon overlord, which I think works quite well considering her backstory. But before we talk about Applejack herself, let's talk about where scarecrows actually come from, because it does really fit into her lore, or at least the lore that I'm going to be making up for her. Anyways, so scarecrows actually go back over 3,000 years, where ancient Egyptians used these kind of like wooden frames along the Nile River to scare off quails. The thing is, a lot of early scarecrows didn't actually have any humanoid shapes onto them. The first humanoid-like scarecrows appeared in Japan. We call these the Kakashis, which is basically a rag-wrapped humanoid figurine covered in like really bad-smelling stuff to keep animals away. And then during medieval Europe, when the Black Plague basically killed off a lot of workers, farmers needed someone or something to replace them in scaring away kind of like birds and animals from eating their crops. And so they made these human-shaped scarecrows. And that's when you got the classic straw men on sticks. And then in America, when settlers brought the wicker versions along, that's when a lot of these kind of scarecrow-looking things became really popular all across America during the 19th century. So in my head, I feel like scarecrows have always symbolized loneliness and duty, and that really eerie line between human and not quite human, which I thought was going to be quite perfect for Applejack's character design. Now we know that Applejack in life was honest and hardworking, and she can also be sometimes stubborn. Whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing, it depends on the situation. But the thing is, she's the type of person that gets really intense when you push certain buttons. She's quite similar with Rainbow Dash in terms of their competitiveness. I mean, I can't remember the exact episode, but she was on this rodeo and she didn't get to win any like first prize or first ribbons, and so she basically ran away from her family. And I believe that, I suppose it could be justifiable, but that was quite an intense reaction. So I wanted to take advantage of her intensity and kind of put that into her lore for Hazbin Hotel. So this is my idea of it. So in this alternate universe, the Flim Flam brothers came back with yet again another scam, and this time they were really serious about making this work. So things escalated, fights broke out, and Applejack ends up accidentally killing one of the brothers during the struggle. She doesn't walk away either, she does take massive injuries and shortly dies later. Now the surviving brother, the surviving Flim Flam brother, then panics, and instead of calling for help, he tries to hide her body by stuffing her inside a scarecrow and basically putting her in the middle of her own orchard. And that's why Applejack would end up in Hazbin Hell. Now I know a lot of people will be arguing with me in the comments down below saying that, oh, she might have just been trying to protect her family from the Flim Flam brothers. Why would she end up in hell over that? I mean, to be completely fair, Pensius is the example of why someone who didn't really have any evil intentions could end up in hell, so that's what I'm gonna go for in terms of this excuse. Anyways, Applejack wakes up in hell, but this time she would be a bit more different. She's colder, she's more bitter, she's still a workhorse. I do genuinely believe that even if she does go down in hell or heaven, she would still be, she would still have a really good work ethic. This time, I don't think she will have any interest in honesty anymore, because she felt like honesty would have failed her in life. So she would run kind of like a massive hell type farm and maybe hire a lot of sinners to do hard labor. I feel like she would be quite a good overlord for sinners that go down in hell due to the sin of sloth. So I feel like she would definitely work the lazy people to their grave essentially. And then in terms of her design, I essentially, as you guys could see, I turned her into a scarecrow. I did turn her into the classic American version with like the cloth or ragdoll type look. And just to reiterate the fact that she's stuffed with like straw and hay, she's got like these wheat or hay coming out of her in certain parts of her design. And this is quite subtle, but I did add some ropes all across her design as well, just because whenever I see scarecrows, I do see them being tied by ropes. So I thought it was just a really nice subtle design to add. And lastly, I gave her a pitchfork just because I thought that would make her look a bit more like a farmer. But yet again, I feel like I should have given her a rake instead. Next up is Pinkie Pie, who becomes a party overlord, so I'm leaning more into the clown and just a history type for her design. And clown-like characters go all the way back to ancient Egypt, Greece and Rome, where fools and mimics basically entertain crowds and people. And you guys know that at some point jesters kind of became a whole thing in medieval Europe as well. Then at some point we got the Harlequins and Period, which are basically very early clown archetypes. And then by the 18th and 19th century, circus clowns basically evolved into what we know today, with like the whole white face and bright makeup kind of look. Thing is, in the 20th century, that's when clowns became a bit more interesting, because then it's split into two categories. We got the very fun birthday clowns that basically kind of came off the circus clown theme. They're still quite vibrant with the white face. And then we get the creepy, horror, psychotic, murderous clowns that came out of nowhere. Then I thought, Pinkie perfectly sits between both, so she is quite adorable, she is a very cheery character and a lot of people do really like her, but also she can be quite unhinged, as you guys may know. Now the thing is, Pinkie has always been quite impulsive and she can get a bit too enthusiastic, so I wanted to use this to my advantage as well. So in this alternate universe, things go very wrong right after that episode. I can't remember the episode, but it's right after the goof off with cheese sandwich. So in canon, during her goof off with cheese sandwich, is that really his name? I think so. But yeah, during that goof off, a giant party setup basically fell on Rainbow Dash, and that's when she realized the whole thing, and she was like, oh, I don't really like this kind of whole thing anymore because Rainbow is not very happy, and it ended like that, happy ending. But in this alternate universe, I have a different idea, and my idea is when that party setup fell on Rainbow Dash, it actually ended up killing her and it ruined the whole thing, and that's when Pinkie spiraled into basically further madness. She would then carry this guilt that makes her think that it was all her fault and the reason why Rainbow Dash is dead. And I mean, to be fair, it would have been her fault anyways, but basically she would carry that guilt and it pushes her into full-blown mania, and she keeps trying to suppress it just by partying, and eventually she loses control, and at some point, don't know the details, but she eventually accidentally kills herself in the process. And because in my head, Pinkie has always been linked into clown imagery, she descends into hell as a clown demon overlord. I feel like she would continue this suppression by party when she goes down in hell, so she would definitely still kind of have some fun all across hell, and she would basically supply decorations, performers, alcohol, party weapons, those kind of things to anyone that wants to throw a party in hell. So she would basically be quite close to, what's her name, Queen Bee? In terms of evilness, I feel like she's kind of a bit of both. If she wasn't Hazbin Hell, I feel like she could be really, really nice, but she's also a bit too cracked up. And in terms of her design, I of course went with the clown theme, and you guys might notice that for her hair, it's partially straight, and that's because I want to partially say that she is sort of happy, sort of not happy, which is why she has a bit of straight hair. I also found this really cute kind of croquette type clown outfit in Pinterest, and I thought that's definitely the kind of thing I would imagine Pinkie would wear. I also thought that it would be quite cool to show how one side of her body slash face is sad and the other side is happy, to just show how kind of conflicted she is in terms of personality. Now we're moving on to Rainbow Dash, and no, I'm not going to be using my story from Pinkie Pie's section into this section. It's basically going to be completely separated just because in my head I thought it'd be much easier. But anyways, Rainbow Dash has always been really competitive, and sometimes that competitiveness really does cross into dangerous line, and we've seen that happen quite a few times actually. So one example I could think of the top of my head right now would be the Mngo.tea episode, where she basically was so intent on being the hero, of being everyone's hero, that she essentially nearly put a lot of ponies' lives in danger just so that she could be number one. There was also that episode where she just joined the Wonderbolts and she made this really reckless maneuver that then had the entire Wonderbolt team crash. And if I remembered all right, if I could remember this, she only did that just because she wanted to show off, to make sure that she's basically on the same league as the Wonderbolts. So in this alternate universe, I was thinking that her need to win would eventually backfire on her. And it does backfire. She pushes herself too hard, she injures others, and she eventually gets herself fatally hurt in the process. So in my head, I was thinking that maybe she was challenged onto a race, or like she challenged someone onto a race purely out of like, I would say, egotistical reasons. So she didn't need to do any of this, but she wanted to win and she was determined to win. And let's say she's got into this race, and because of her like rain boom thing, she basically crashes and manages to hurt some people, because I would say that like that rain boom, it is quite powerful from what we could see in the series. I was thinking like she might be trying to show off or trying to win using her rain boom, and it eventually fails. It does fail, leading to her crash landing and rain boom somewhat failing, but also causing people to die because of the impact, and also killing her on impact. And in Hell, I don't think Rainbow would run a place. Kind of like, we know Vox and the V's, they have like their own little business. Even Carmilla, she has her own little weapons business. So I have this feeling that perhaps a lot of overlords own like stuff, like own businesses and those kind of things. But I don't think Rainbow would be that kind of overlord. But she would definitely run people. Not run a place, but she would run people. Specifically former athletes and cheaters who broke records in life by like scamming their way into the top. So they would flock to her because she would grant them insane speed, insane strength through contracts. Kind of like, I'm not sure if this is going to be true, but kind of like how I see Rosie right now. So like, I don't know if Rosie actually owns any businesses, but we do know that she is in control or has some power over a lot of people / the cannibals. Also, Alistair. We aren't fully certain yet on how she was able to promise or give Alistair power, but I have a feeling that that's kind of the same thing that Rainbow Dash would be doing. Like, she would have a lot of influence over some people, a lot of people actually, and she would grant them certain strengths and powers. And then for her design, I did go for a sport punk type of aesthetic, and essentially she's wearing these leggings that kind of has these patterns that look like race patterns, like racetrack patterns. And you know, when you guys like run a race, I've never run a race in my life, but when you run a race, there's usually like a ribbon at the end of the line. I basically use those all across her design. So for example, the hair tie and the scarf, and it's just a subtle reference to how she basically died. Next up is Fluttershy, and I was a bit hesitant in terms of her design, just because the last time I drew Fluttershy in like a Hazbin Hotel type design, a lot of you guys got really pissed at me. And to be fair, a lot of the people that were really mad at me were just basically referencing the fact that they don't actually think Fluttershy could ever end up in hell, or like my reasoning for her ending up in hell was not good enough. No one was really commenting about the design being bad or anything, so at least that was a relief. But in terms of like her design in here, I was a bit more, I guess, cautious with it, just because I don't want you guys to be mad. I don't like people getting mad at me. So she was quite tricky, because also she's quite a sweet character. But the thing is, a lot of the theme I see about her in terms of the series is that she tends to prioritize animals over her friends like a lot. I'm going to talk about this again because every time I mention Fluttershy, I feel like I talk about this episode a lot. But you know, the episode Bats, she sides with like the vampire fruit bats over Applejack's entire orchard, and over the only thing that Applejack uses in order to like make money for her family, which I thought was a bit dodgy. And the next example I've got, it's not really animal, but it's like a different person or someone else, but like Discord, right? There was an episode where she was basically protecting Discord over her friend because she sees him as a misunderstood creature. And I feel like on that episode, even though she was giving Discord a chance, which was quite nice, I feel like she was disregarding her friends quite a lot, which could have potentially put them in danger should Discord was actually like evil or something. And another thing is that she is actually quite cowardly, which makes her a very unreliable friend to be with. So another example I've got of that on the top of my head right now is that episode where they have to like get the dragon, this like red dragon, off because it was causing smoke all across Ponyville or something, right? And everyone was scared, everyone was terrified, but everyone was out there stepping up for each other and also at some point protecting each other. And Fluttershy, she wasn't really doing much at the beginning, although she did do something at the end which made the dragon leave, so that was at least good, but like that made her in my eyes quite unreliable. So when I was thinking for like the lore for Fluttershy in Hazbin Hotel, I was going to say, in my alternate universe, I would say that the misguided loyalty goes a bit too far. So she would find like this dangerous, poisonous or whatever creature, and she was repeatedly warned about it, not to take it in by her friends, of course, but she does it anyway. It ends up killing her, and after that, this is going to sound really grim, but her starving animals, confused and desperate, would then have consumed her. Which is why she has this kind of like chaotic, a bit mismatched design, and I'm going to explain that in just a minute. So in hell, she becomes this, I can't think of a proper name for her, but I was thinking an animal demon overlord. She's going to be quite small and unassuming compared to the other overlords that we're drawing right now, but she would basically grant sinners these animal themed powers, kind of giving them claws, wings, fangs, venoms, those kind of things. And even though she's an overlord, I do believe that she's going to be quite a gentle overlord. She wouldn't really be going after anyone's guts or anything. And I feel like a lot of the people who would want to form contracts with her would initially be like really weak sinners who's just trying to defend themselves. And then for her design, because in my alternate universe, since she was eaten by animals, I was thinking that I should give her like mismatched animals, kind of like theming her with Discord actually, now that I think about it. So she's got those bunny ears from Angel, those small wings right there were like bird wings, because I see that she's sometimes got like birds around her and stuff. And then on her, I'm dyslexic, left leg, right leg, you know, with the black and yellow, that's referencing the bees or wasps. And then on her, what leg did I say? Is that right leg? Yeah, the other leg, that's all furry looking because that's the bear. I did also add these cute little roses just because I thought it would be really, really cute on her. Now we're going to be moving on to Rarity, and again, because she is my favorite pony, I'm going to be very biased and say that her design is of course my favorite design. And the thing is, I was quite excited to talk about this just because I really wanted to talk about beauty products or like past beauty trends that were quite dangerous at the time. So I wanted her lore to basically tie into the dark history of beauty standards, because people used to literally die to look good, and we still have examples right now to this day of people having like botched surgeries and them dying afterwards because of some sort of infection or whatever going into their bloodstream and killing them, those kind of things. So it still happens today anyway. But anyways, one example that I could think of right now of past beauty standards would be having really white, pale skin. And I suppose that in some countries right now, that's still a huge kind of thing. But the thing is, back then, the way that a lot of people tend to whiten their skin was using lead or mercury makeup. Now, whilst this did work, it also caused organ failure. So a lot of women were usually kind of like getting really ill and really sick until doctors found out that it was because of the makeup. And another thing that was quite tragic back then would be corsets. I can't remember if this is true or not, but like corsets used to be kind of like a legal thing, as in like every woman had to wear them. You can't go outside without them. It's kind of like, it's very taboo. But the thing is, some people were really obsessed with like having really thin waist because that was the beauty standard back then, right? And it crushed ribs and basically warped spines. And back in ancient China, since having small feet was quite a beauty standard at the time, and still to some areas today, a lot of women would warp their feet, like band their feet to make them look really, really small. But the thing is, this would basically alter their feet to a point where a lot of them would basically struggle to walk, and if they do walk, it would be basically walking on glass shards. So as the saying goes, beauty has a deadly price and Rarity is willing to pay it. And we've seen that happen so many times in so many episodes as well, where she wants to look good and she's willing to do whatever it takes to look good. And I'm going to sound very biased in here because she's my favorite character, but the thing is, I don't see anything wrong with wanting to look good. It's alright as long as you're not harming yourself, as long as you're not harming anyone. But the thing is, it does get a bit more dodgy when you're trying to harm yourself with beauty. And I genuinely believe she could never ever be evil. I genuinely believe she will never ever be evil. But the thing is, she can be a bit obsessive. She gets very neurotic about fashion and perfection. And of course, she gets completely insane with her reputation. So in my alternate universe, Rarity basically becomes a bit too obsessed with keeping up with extreme beauty trends. So she would try things like highly toxic powders, really bad dyes that really gets into your skin and stuff like that. Whatever is in fashion, basically. And she would eventually die from all these chemical complications. I can't think of a reason why she would go in hell, but in my head, I was thinking that maybe she forced these beauty trends on some people. Like, not not on purpose, but just because she got a bit too obsessive, right? Maybe she pushed some of these toxic beauty trends on like her models and killed them, and that's why she would have ended up in hell. Now I think she would definitely be a fashion overlord or a glamour overlord. I think that would be her name, like the glamour demon, something like that. I feel that a lot of people would say that she would get along with the V's, but in my opinion, I don't think she would get along with them at all. I think she would treat them as competition, and I have a feeling that if she ever comes across like Valentino or more likely Velvet, she would definitely be like giving her snide comments saying, oh, that is so last week when it comes to like her style and stuff like that. And then for her design, I basically included the examples I mentioned earlier of like past toxic beauty trends onto her. So like in terms of her face, you could see that there's some whitening over there from the lead and mercury. Her waist is very, very cinched because of the corset, and then on her feet you can see that there's some like evidence of foot binding in there with all the wraps that she's wearing there. And then I'm gonna put my hands up for this because her hairstyle, I basically used Angel's drag queen look from like, I'm gonna put up the picture in here, but she basically has this kind of like updo hair that Angel has when he sang the Losing Streak song. I just thought it was absolutely gorgeous and I wanted to put it on Rarity. Last but not least, we've got the princess, Twilight, and essentially I wanted her history to somewhat connect to real life rulers whose quest for power or knowledge basically caused a lot of harm. And one example I could think of right now would be Henry VIII. And the reason why I'm mentioning him right now is just because I've studied him a lot during my GCSE days, and he basically executed people for political advantage and for marital advantage in some cases. We also had Mary, Queen of Scots, or Bloody Mary, who executed people because of religious purposes. And then we also had Leopold II, who killed millions through exploitation. And while Twilight isn't really that level of evil, she has done things that kind of was a bit dodgy and that also kind of mirrored dangerous behavior. So for example, there was this one episode where she was really, really paranoid about not sending a letter to Celestia of what she learned that day because she hasn't learned anything that day for whatever reason, right? And she was really paranoid about it and she was going mad. She casted spells on like, I think it was either the ponies or like a doll that made people fall in love or want the doll, and everyone in Ponyville got completely ballistic about it. And I can't remember the exact episode, but there was one where she basically like time traveled back to warn herself to not be too obsessive with something that's going to happen in the future, and she ended up obsessing over it to a point where I think she hurt herself or somewhat hurt herself. And I feel like that's definitely something that could end up killing her in my universe. Because kind of like Rarity, Twilight's biggest flaw would be obsession, with knowledge, with magic, with rules. Making sure that she does things right to a point where she would be willing to do things wrong in order to do right. So in this alternate universe, she's having one of those like crash outs. She's having one of those spiraling episodes where she was really obsessed about finding something out. Her friends have already warned her to calm down, to come back home, to relax for a little bit and go back to it in the morning or something like that. But no, she's gotten completely obsessive. She's got into this like really old, dangerous, dodgy library, and one of the shelves basically collapsed on her, killing her in the end. I thought it was quite fitting because at the end of her days, she basically she was surrounded with knowledge that she was so desperately wanting to find out. So I thought that that was the only death that I could think of that would be suitable for her and her character. And then as an overlord, I kind of feel like I have no name for her, honestly. I just called her the Royal Demon or the Royal Overlord. I mean, she's still elegant, she's still powerful, and what she does is that she's kind of like Fluttershy, where she grants like powers to people, but she grants magical forbidden powers and forbidden knowledge, those kind of things. Very rare abilities. I feel like as an overlord, she would definitely be quite sought after, especially for people that would really want some of that power. But I feel like she would be quite a decent overlord. She wouldn't just be signing contracts or making contracts willy-nilly. Someone definitely has to be worth her while in order to make these kind of contracts. And then in terms of her design, I kind of wanted to go for something a bit more ethereal, something a bit more elegant. It is quite out of the design in terms of all the other characters I've drawn in this video, but that's because she's a princess, so I'm going to give her the princess treatment. I've given her typical long straight hair with a fringe, and in the inner part of her hair it kind of made it look galaxy theme. And then on her torso and leg they kind of resemble bookshelves because she would keep books in there. Like, I don't know how, but like magically wise, she would hold books in there. That way all of her forbidden knowledge would be with her. And then for her like skirt area, I thought it would be really cool if I made them look like papers, right? Because it's kind of cool the way that it's textured. And of course it's a reference to like the amount of papers she would use when she does research, like in her current life and in her past life. And a subtle thing I want you guys to notice right now is that you see that there's some words on her skirt and her sleeve area. I actually used the script for the B movie for that because I was trying to use some writings, my own writings for it, but I had no idea what to write. So I was like, let's just get the B movie script and put it on overlay on her skirt. I thought it was hilarious, and also it made my life so much easier, so that's why I added that in. Well, that's all I've done for this video, and I hope you guys enjoyed that because that took me so long to design and draw these characters. So I hope you guys really do like them. And also everything I've said in this video and the characters I've designed and the kind of like design I went for, it's all just for fun, so please don't take anything in here too seriously. But if you guys have any ideas on what kind of overlords or powers these girls would have in Hazbin Hotel, let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thank you so much for your support, and I'll see you all next Mango Monday. Bye!